Welcome to the Celebration of You. I'm your host, Holly Dowling. I'm thrilled to share with you incredible people from all over the world who are living and leading extraordinary lives. From overcoming immense adversity to discovering the secret sauce to leading with courage and grace. Their stories are going to bring you hope and inspiration. Now, let the stories begin. Hi, everybody, and welcome. So excited to have you with us today. And I just get so excited and I get goosies when I hear all the amazing people that reach out and share like a story they loved, a podcast that inspired them. I'm loving all and every one of you out there that are taking the time to hear this show, because as you know, it was a mission on my heart to celebrate extraordinary people that are living extraordinary lives, and not because it was handed to them on a silver platter. Typically, it's stories of hope and inspiration that blow my mind. And as always, I like to celebrate somebody, and I don't usually know a lot of the story. I know a little bit, but I don't know everything. Today, I am so excited to introduce you to this new friend in my life who we've just become acquainted, but all because of the 6 degrees of separation. So it's a great story too. And we'll talk about it here in just a moment of how we got introduced, because I want to give her a huge shout out as well. So today I welcome the gorgeous, the amazing, the courageous, and the brave and inspiring Kristine Irwin. Hey, girlfriend.
Hey, Holly, thank you so much for having me on here today. I'm so excited to be here. So thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, you have no idea. I'm so excited, and I don't even really know. I just know enough to know I got to get your story on the air. We got to get your story out there, right? So we got to tell people. Let's give a shout out to the mutual friend Michelle Reese, who is the whole reason you're on this show, right?
Yep. Thank you, Michelle. She is an amazing individual. And, for her to see what she saw in me, that my story is so important to bring to the light. So I can't thank Michelle enough either. So shout out to you, Michelle.
Huge shout out. And didn't she heard you speak back in Pennsylvania. Yep. Tell us the story of really quick, just how this all happened. This is a great story.
Yeah. So Michelle and I we are on the same association together here in Pittsburgh. It's called the Pittsburgh Human Resource Association. And I'm on the board actually for the association, but I was speaking at their conference, and me and Michelle have known each other for a while now through the association. But she came to my session that I was speaking at. She heard me speak, and she came up to me afterwards and she just said, "I need to get you in touch with Holly." And so that's literally where it happened. It was last October, and Holly, as that's how I got introduced to you, and started listening to this amazing podcast that you have. And then I saw Michelle again in January, and she said, I need to get you in touch with Holly. I'm going out to Arizona soon. And then it just started to snowball from there. So, Michelle is definitely, the driving factor of us coming together. So
I love it. And look at it. She's going to listen to this, because I know when she listens to the show, she does it over her lunch hour and she gets so excited. And I always get messages from her, from the guests that I've had on the show. She'll go, "I love this person." And so on that note, we are just starting off this show with giving love to one of our favorite listeners out there, Michelle. And by the way, Kristine, let me just put a little bug in your ear. I've been wanting to get Michelle on the show for probably 3 years. She's got a hilarious story. So can I just ask you to help me in that?
Yes. And I will be seeing her in the next few days anyways in an event for our association we're part of. So I will make sure to mention that to her.
Oh, I love it. Well, let's go to, so before we get to the story, let's talk about, tell everybody what you're currently doing. What is your professional world? And then you can take us to this amazing association you've started, and we'll get to why.
Okay. No, that sounds great. So, I'm a native of Pittsburgh, and I am a wife. I'm a mother. I have 2 wonderful small children, an amazing husband. I love a little boy. His name is James, and he's 3. And I have a little girl. Her name is Zella, and she is 1 year old. And so other than that, though, I am a human resource professional with a company called Pittsburgh Mercy. And what we do at that organization is we're a community-based mental health organization, and we service a wide variety of populations, specifically vulnerable populations. So those that are experiencing mental health, intellectual disabilities, those that are experiencing homelessness. We service veterans, elderly. I mean, you name it. We serve a pretty wide gamut of different populations, and we come at it from a holistic approach. Not only are we trying to provide individuals, we're meeting them wherever they're coming in at, because we want to get them acclimated back into the community, into their families, but we take it as a holistic approach where we're not just providing them with shelter, with clothing. We're providing them with dignity, with respect, with, as I said, getting back into their community, getting back to their family. So I am actually on their talent acquisition team, and I'm one of the community engagement partners with Pittsburgh Mercy. So I get to go out in the community. I get to introduce our organization to groups and individuals that may not know about us. And I get to talk to individuals that are looking for career opportunities and help guide them into what might be the best career opportunity for them with us. So it's a very, very enlightening role, and our mission is absolutely fabulous. And that's what really attracted me to Pittsburgh Mercy when I came to it about 3 years ago.
Well, and it seems so perfectly serendipitous and aligned to your heart's passion and your soul to bring awareness to something that truly impacted your life. So when I think about, what you just shared, and now learning about what you do, no wonder you're so passionate about it. You're really out there professionally helping people as much as you are in your personal life, being an advocate and a champion for so many people's voices. Oh, you are something. So see, I just learned something. See, like I said, I keep it, I don't know a lot. I like to be, I might go into tears. I'll be laughing. My eyes are closed, how it rolls.
Yeah.
So then take us to, well, you started an organization called Voices of Hope, and that was just a few years ago. I'm going to take us back to a pivotal moment that probably was, has changed your life, and you've harnessed it and made it better versus worse. So will you take us through your story, my friend?
Sure. So Voices of Hope, I can tell you the turning point that Voices of Hope became developed, but it goes further back than that. Voices of Hope was truly became to be what it is because of my children. I developed Voices of Hope in 2015, and it was just about 3 months after I had my first child, which is my son, James. But the concept of Voices of Hope is my story from a number of years ago, way back when I was a freshman in college, and I was very young. I was very naive. I was 19 years old. And so I had, I'd graduated from high school. I grew up in a town called Johnstown, Pennsylvania, which is about an hour and 45 minutes from Pittsburgh, closer towards like central Pennsylvania. And so I was really excited to go to college. I was going to Point Park University in Pittsburgh. So I was moving away from my family. I was so excited to, have this newfound freedom. And, that at that time in your life, I feel like a lot of individuals stepping into college or making that transition from high school, maybe to even a job or whatever the case may be, there's that feeling of being invincible, like nothing bad is going to happen to you. And then that's how I truly felt,
Yeah, I remember that. You do feel invincible, right? Yeah.
And even now, there are times now that, I'm a little bit older, a little bit wiser. And there are even moments sometimes where I still feel like I'm invincible, but on a different level. And I say that as in, I know a lot of the dangers and the bad things that happen in the world. And I know that I'm not invincible from that, but there are sometimes I forget. And I still think there are brief moments where I think now sometimes I'm still invincible. But anyways.
You are, Kristine, you are. I'm giving you that.
Thank you. But so I go to college, and a little backstory on the incident. So I had developed an extremely large crush on an individual that I worked with at a convenience store over the summer. And so this crush, I don't know what I thought at the time, if this was going to be my future husband or what, but I needed to get this guy to like me. And so long story short, I go to school, and I'm still in contact with this guy that I have this crush on, and he's not giving me any signs that he's, likes me or anything like that. He just is basically in like the friend zone. So I still continue. I need to be hanging out with him. I need to, do anything that he does so that I can get him to like me. So one weekend, it was the weekend of October 9th, I believe, in 2004. I went home to Johnstown without my parents' knowledge. They actually were going out of town, about 45 minutes away on a trip somewhere for the weekend. And they didn't know I was home. So I went home. My sole purpose of going home was to hang out with this gentleman that I had this massive crush on. I stayed with some individuals that I had known through high school that weekend. They're very close friends. I trust them with my life. The Friday night I was there, no problem. Got to hang out with friends that I went to high school with. And then Saturday rolls around and me and a couple of my really good friends from high school are out at a local pool hall. And while we're there, I get a text message from a gentleman that I worked with at the convenience store. I'm just going to give him the name of Carl.
Okay.
Carl is not the guy that I had the crush on. Carl was a friend of the gentleman I had a crush on. And so Carl texted me and he wanted to know if I wanted to hang out. He wanted to know if I wanted to maybe go to a party that my crush was at. And of course, that's what I wanted to do. That's why I came to town. Why wouldn't I?
Now, wait, I have to ask a question. I'm into details. So did your friend, Carl, we'll call him, that worked at the convenience store, did he know you had a crush on this person?
I don't know.
Okay.
If he may have, but I'm not sure, but I can tell you that within the next hour after getting that text, he did know. Because Carl then came and he picked me up. I left my friends at the pool hall. I don't remember anybody trying to stop me or offer to come with me. And I think at that moment in my life, if someone tried to stop me, I probably would have just brushed him off and went anyways. So I left with Carl and we drove around for a bit. We stopped at his house. He grabbed some alcohol and then we continued on to where we ended up in the middle of the woods.
Not going to a party.
Not going to a party. No, we didn't end up at a party. But at the same time, it wasn't a red flag for me yet because a couple weeks prior, we were at that same spot in the woods. It was Carl, my crush, and another individual that worked at the convenience store, and then 3 of my really trusted good friends from high school. So it wasn't a red flag to me yet because we had already been there.
Okay.
And we start having this conversation. This is where I tell Carl that I have this big crush on, the other gentleman, and, he's trying to give me relationship advice. And I remember him specifically asking me relationship advice for his girlfriend. And, I did have a couple beers with him and he kept persisting, that I take a swig of the hard liquor that he had brought. It was specifically, I remember it was Crown Royal. And I kept saying no. And finally, after much persistence, I gave in. And I took a sip of the hard liquor of the Crown Royal. And at that moment, I have no recollection of what happened until I woke up in the hospital the next morning.
What? You took a sip of Crown Royal and you were out and don't remember anything?
I have no recollection of anything from that point on. No.
Oh my God, I'm covered in goosebumps. See, I don't know your story. So
yeah.
Okay, hold on. We have to pause for a second. Cause I'm absorbing. Okay.
No, you're fine.
Okay. So I know you've had to tell this 100 times over and over.
Mm-hmm.
When you woke up in the hospital, how and what you woke up in a hospital, no idea anything of the events of the night. What was that moment like for you when you woke up? I mean, who was there with you? How did you get there? What did you learn when you woke up there?
So when I woke up, I was still very disoriented. So my thought process wasn't fully there. But there was a nurse in the room with me and she was the first person I turned to and I asked, why was I here? And her immediate response was because you were raped. And I even remember thinking back to that moment when she told me that because I feel like that I truthfully didn't even know what rape meant and that I still felt a lot of overwhelming feelings of shame and guilt rush over me. Granted, that could have also been related that I was 19, I was underage. I did have some beers with him, whatever the case may be, that could be associated with that. But I had just these overwhelming feelings of shame and guilt. And I remember being so concerned about disappointing my parents. And so she had filled me in on everything that had happened. And what had happened is that one, I'm forever indebted to a woman that I don't even know her name, but there was a woman in her home. It was a Sunday morning, October 10th. She was in her home. She happened to go to her window to look out, look out the window, typical, and she saw a car stopped on her street at the stop sign. She thought, well, that's normal. She thought nothing of it and walked away. And for whatever reason, she went back to that window again. And when she did, she still saw that same car stopped at the stop sign. And she immediately realized that something is happening and she had to continue to watch. And as she watched in the next few moments, she saw the passenger door open and I fall out of the passenger side of the vehicle.
She saw that. Oh my God. Oh my
and
God.
then the car drove away and left me there. So she immediately called 911. And then at that point, my story became public before I even knew about it. You know, the police were called, an ambulance was called. My parents were called. My friends, my good friends that I was staying at their apartment, I had found this out later, but they were out driving around in the middle of the night looking for me because they had no idea where I was.
Oh my God.
So
she saved your life. She saved your life.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Was she able to recognize and give details of that car? Was this person ever found and convicted?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, the person was found. The trial, it was a long process. I mean, immediately from what I can remember when we left that hospital, I remember the officer that was in charge of my case immediately wanted to charge him with anything and everything that he could give him. And what it came down to is in the beginning, he was charged with, I think, about 2 counts of rape, a couple counts of sexual assault, some counts of indecent assault. I mean, there was a lengthy list of charges that he was charged with. And based off the way that the system handled it, you know, because he pled guilty, the charges were lessened. He was put on probation. And it wasn't until 2015 that he finally went to jail for 2 years, only on the accounts of two counts of indecent assault. So
wow,
that was a little, I don't want to say, yes, I could say it was a little re-traumatizing because I kind of got myself out of the situation. Whereas, you know, the only thing that I did is, so I showed up at the preliminary hearing and I remember sitting there with my mother, my aunt, a couple of my good friends that were testifying that were all subpoenaed to come to this. And I remember sitting there and I saw, as I watched, 2 full garbage bags of evidence go through, because we actually went back to the crime scene and found evidence. And
you went back? So you
did.
Actually went back. Did you have any recollection when you went back and you saw the scene? Do you remember anything?
No, unfortunately I don't. And in that moment when I went back, it was only a few days fresh. So, right after it happened and I was released from the hospital, I took a week off of school. And at that point I had to go give, you know, statements, verbal statements, written statements. And that's when we went with the police to the crime scene, and there they found my underwear. They found my socks.
Oh my God.
They found the box that the Crown Royal came in. I mean, they had 2 garbage bags full of evidence, which also included my clothes, from the day that I was in the hospital, all for evidence. They had performed actually a rape test kit on me, and I was completely incoherent. I had no idea that they actually even performed the rape test kit on me until I was, came to, and they were able to tell me everything that I went through.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So,
oh.
I knew in that moment, though, when I was at the preliminary hearing and I saw the evidence go by and I saw him go by.
You did see him?
I did.
Did he look at you?
No. Nope.
Oh, that.
Because it was just, we were kind of in a waiting area and it was more of like happening in a room. They actually never, and this is a piece I actually don't remember because there was a lot in that first year that I tried to like block out.
Yeah.
One thing that I don't remember, I don't think that I was actually ever called back in that preliminary hearing. I don't even think any of my friends and family that were subpoenaed were ever called back either. And with that being said, I looked at my mom and I said, I can't face him. I can't face him in court. I didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
And I wish now I have the strength. I have the strength now I feel to do it. But in that moment, there was no way I could do it. And so I gave a verbal statement. I gave a written statement that they presented in court when he actually went to trial. So he went to trial, like I said, and then I didn't even find out. Actually, it's kind of crazy how I found out that he went to jail is that, I was working on my book and I was kind of like trying to figure out some memories, things that I couldn't remember. And I was doing some research and I had went on the Johnstown newspaper to find any articles maybe that I could find. Cause there was something published in the beginning of 2005 that, said his name, and said
Oh,
that, that he was being convicted of all these charges, and that the woman, they didn't name my name, but they said, the woman, I can't remember if they said where I was from or whatever, but, so I knew that article was somewhere in the archives of my old, my hometown newspaper. So specifically went on looking for that. But what I found is I found the news article in March 2015, that he was convicted for 2 counts of indecent assault and finally went to jail for 2 years.
and that took 5 years, right?
That took, well, it was from 2004 to 2015.
Oh,
So it took
no.
11.
Yeah, 11 years.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
11 years for him to
Yep.
go to jail. And you've never, okay, so, and I thank you for being just so transparent. And I know this is a story that no matter how many times you share it, and I know you're sharing it with intention to help create awareness, and we'll get there because I want to know some of the biggest things that you're out there doing to help other
Sure.
people that are victims. I want to go back to when you said I couldn't see him. And I don't want anybody to miss this. And the reason I'm so choked up is this wasn't a stranger. This was somebody that was a colleague at work that you trusted, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So is there a part of you that just wants to, I mean, look at me, I'm getting emotional.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Isn't there a part of you that just wants to grab him and just say, why? Why me? Right? Like, do you want to do that still? Do you not care to do that still? I just want to know.
Yeah. And I'll add a side note too, is so I actually worked with Carl for 2 summers. I knew Carl even longer than I knew my crush. And so just to put that in perspective, no, I mean, Holly, there have been days in my healing. And I remember specifically, not so much anymore, but I mean, I've had days where I would just tear myself apart. Like, I thought I could trust him. Like, I don't understand it. I thought he was a good person, just have these constant battles with myself. And, I have wanted to ask that question, like, why, or was this, and I never want to take, because it's not my fault. And there have been so many times in my healing where, I would think, no, this was my fault. I left with him alone. Like, look at all these things. And it kind of goes back to how we view, our culture views sexual assault and rape right now, is that, and here I am thinking, oh, I left with him alone. I put myself in that situation, and in my own healing, I had to get out of that. But, that's part of the reason that I even go back now. And I found out also why it took so long for him to go to jail is so I have done research throughout the years just to try to find anything, some kind of inkling to tell me, why did he do this, without flat out asking him. And from my understanding is the reason it did take so long is because probation was violated through other crimes. So they're not, a lot of them weren't the same as mine by any means, but, just to see that there was some form of a pattern. And I'm by no means, a therapist or educated in that sort of background, but I would literally go online and search public records because I wanted to find something out. I wanted to have some form of like closure to understand why he did this. And, the biggest thing that came to me is that, I'm not ever going to find my answer.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing I can do for myself is just forgive him for what he did.
And that takes tremendous courage, tremendous faith, I would believe. A lot goes into that forgiveness. And you're right. I'm sitting here thinking the same things that you're saying. I'm like, how come it took so long? Because he admitted to it. Right. So like he admitted to it. He didn't say not guilty. So then it's like, oh, we could spend a whole webinar or podcast on just, the laws. So let's go to what I love so much and respect so much about you is that you didn't hide from this, or maybe you did for a while. You had to do your own healing, your own process. You are now out there. You figured out how to heal. I want to know share with us a couple strategies or what you've done that you feel you attribute to most of your healing. And now share with us your passion of why you're out talking about this and what are you trying to help people understand? I want to know Kristine's passion now around this.
Yeah. So it took some time, I needed some time for myself. I mean, I went down a dark path after, it had happened, and I resorted to alcohol and different things that would numb my experience and hopefully, just get me away from it. And it wasn't until about 2006, so about 2 years after it happened, that I realized that actually, while a lot of my family and friends did know what happened to me just for specific reasons, I realized that talking about my story was helping me heal. And I had found RAINN, it's the Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network, in 2006. And I believe that was the first, I think it was the first year they started their Speakers Bureau, but I found it and I decided to join their Speakers Bureau. And what had happened is they would send out, when speaking opportunities would come up, and they would send it out all to their members, and whoever was available to go speak at the time, they would go. And I had gotten my first opportunity to speak at the University of Delaware. And it truthfully, I mean, at that time in my life, I was not a big public speaker. I did public speaking class in college, and I'll be honest, it probably was really horrible compared to now. But I got up there and I just shared my story. I just spoke. I just let the words flow, how I felt. And after I did that, just the overwhelming feelings of the individuals that were there that came up to me afterwards and gave me hugs and saying to me, "You are so inspiring and you are so brave to get up there and hear and share your story," or telling me that they've experienced something like this. And in my own mind at the time, all I could think about was, wow, this is really helping me, but I'm realizing it's helping somebody else too. And so that made it even better. So it took me a while to really kind of get full momentum of sharing. So I was on the Speakers Bureau, and I'd speak every now and again. It wasn't anything that was as frequent as it is now. And I had to go through some more steps in my own healing to actually get to that point, I believe. And so in the process of healing, I mean, I'll share some things that have worked for me. And one of the biggest things was, learning to love and forgive myself for what had happened.
How do you do that? Doesn't that sound so simple? I mean, I know from my own journey, but I want to hear you say it. Because to say it, people go, really? How do you do that? Right? Yeah.
How do you? And I get that question so much. And, it even goes into, learning to love yourself, but then how do you love somebody else? And I had one of my really best friends say to me, throughout all this process that I'm going through, and she said, you cannot love someone else fully until you fully love yourself. And I had never thought of that, because in my mind, even after this had happened, my sole purpose at that moment, when I was still 19 and trying to deal with some kind of normal after I was raped, was I need to be in a relationship. I cannot survive by myself. And so that was my constant kind of cycle, was that I needed to be in some form of relationship. And one of the biggest things for me to learn to love myself was I took a break. I took a break from relationships for a year and a half.
Good for you.
And that's what I needed. And it's crazy, because to me, that year and a half, I was able to do anything, not, you know what I mean? When I say anything I want, I had nobody, to report back to, or nobody to tell me, to, do the dishes tonight at 9:00 so they're not there in the morning or whatever. I had nobody to tell me to do even those minor tasks. And I took that time, I had a full-time job during that year and a half. I just graduated college. I was living in a town where I had moved to right after college too. So I didn't know a whole lot of people, but I had built a community around me there that was very supportive. And through that, I built on some hobbies, and I'm going to share this one with you just because I love talking about it. I am a huge Lady Gaga fan.
Oh, look at you go, girl.
I am a big Lady Gaga fan. And so in that 18 months, I saw Lady Gaga 8 times.
Does she know this? I think she should know this story.
I wish that she did. She has been such a huge component in my healing. And it's more so what it comes back to is just the music itself. And, I know we all can relate to music and getting lost in the music. I actually, to the point where the hobby came around from also planning out, she was pretty eccentric, back when she first came out, in her outfits and everything and her persona. And I engrossed myself in it. I mean, Holly, I wore a fake meat dress to a concert once, because
you did not. You did. You did. I totally believe you. No, I'm loving this visual right now.
I mean, I had an outfit for every show I went to. I rolled my hair in Diet Pepsi cans.
No.
A lot of hairspray.
You are the best. But this was all part of the journey, right?
Yep.
You didn't have anybody telling you how you should act or what you should do. You didn't have to worry about another darn soul. You got to learn to take care of you. And that is, you know what? That's how you healed right there. I get it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh.
And it's that, and also, one of the things that I also lacked in my life at that time was also God. And, through my whole healing, I never blamed God for anything. But he just wasn't present for me at the time. That as in I was open to allowing him to be present, it just wasn't a focal point. And it wasn't until that time that I spent by myself that, I utilized that time to get a little bit closer. But as time went on, and now, through my husband, we both are very close with God. And that relationship has grown since I had those moments of being by myself, being truthfully alone and learning to love myself.
And I love that you were so honest about that, because during my darkest times, I would scream at God, but it was by the grace of God that I'm alive and I'm here today. So I love and respect you for saying I didn't have God then. You also didn't blame it on God, which is, let's face it, a lot of people that go through a lot of trauma, it's easy to blame God, right? Like, why would you let this happen to me? Kristine, you are like this. So now take us to, you're now really sharing your voice. You're sharing your story in all different ways, right? You've written a book, you're speaking about it. What are you finding? What's driving you when you say, I want other people? Are you trying to help younger people prevent this from happening? Because I want to get to what you would have told your younger self based on who you are now. But before we go there, I would like to know, what are you trying to help when you're out there? What is your goal? What are you trying to do?
Sure. So my main goal is to remind people that they are not alone. Because in these kind of traumatic situations, isolation, is very, it's very overcoming. It's a very powerful feeling. And by sharing my story, it helps me to realize, one, that I'm not alone. But I hope it helps someone else realize that they're not alone as well. And truthfully, the drive behind this is, my own children. As I mentioned before, Voices of Hope truly came to be, after my son was born. And after my son, I'm trying to piece together this in my head really fast, because right around that same time when my son was born, was really when, I said, as I mentioned, doing that research, and that's how I found out my perpetrator was, in jail finally in 2015. So he had gone to jail about 3 months before my son was born. And after my son was born, I realized, I do speaking and I do it here and there, but I really need to be more an advocate, because I am tired of seeing children get abused. I'm tired of seeing adults get abused. And when people come forward, they're not being believed. And whether that's as a bystander, whether that's as the person that is, dealing with the trauma, I want my children and all children to grow up in a world where they are comfortable talking about these things. Because, back in 2004, as I said, I don't think I woke up in the hospital not even realizing what the term rape meant. Yeah. It was just something that we really never talked about. And I want my children to be comfortable talking about taboo issues such as rape and sexual violence. And I also want them to have the courage to speak up when they feel something isn't right. Yes. And even if they're speaking up and in turn, the vibe that maybe they got that they thought was wrong actually is okay, at least they still spoke up when they felt something might have been wrong.
And it can save a lot of potential suicides, because this now, the shame, how much we're now opening up and talking about, the sexual abuse at the hands of people that supposedly love you and care about you, right? The incest. I had a guest on my show about a year and a half ago, and I mean, the trauma that has affected his life, but having been able to forgive and work on him. And yet these are people that you trust, you love. These are family members, right? And these are innocent children. So it's so interesting too, that how many years ago this incident happened in your life, and look at where God's biggest hand is in where you're serving and using your professional skills too, right? Mercy, Pittsburgh Mercy, right? Like, you think about how all of this has come together, and just, and here's what I want everybody listening to know. if you've experienced any kind of trauma, from what Kristine has shared, from rape to domestic violence, I mean, all of this, it's your story. We're not saying you have to share it. It's your story, and you know when it's time. But I think what's interesting, Kristine, you said something about 10 minutes ago that went right to my heart. Because when I started really sharing some of my darker past, just in the last few years, I realized that when I revealed, I healed. And for me, right? Like, and so, and like what you said, when you were able to start talking about it, like that first time, you can remember it like it was yesterday at that university, and you were able to heal too. So for every person, we're not saying you have to go be on a stage to do this. Every person has their own healing journey. And when you get to hear a Kristine story and so many others who are willing to share it publicly, and wasn't easy, but when you got to it, the lives that can be impacted. And thank you for what you're doing now to create a platform and be a part of saying, I'm not going to live in shame anymore. I love who I am. I'm proud to say I'm a wife, a mother, right? And I have bigger reasons. I would love to know, as we wrap this up, and I don't even know, like, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I kind of am. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry in advance, because if you were to go back to that 19-year-old girl back then, and I don't even know that there is any advice you could say. Like, you did the best you knew with what you knew at the time. This was somebody you trusted that you worked with. But what advice could you give that girl again, based on what happened, the course of where your life has taken you? Is there any advice or wisdom you could give to that 19-year-old girl?
If I could give anything to that 19-year-old girl now, I would say, and kind of basing off the context that you said, I'm going after I was raped, I would say to her, you need to take time for yourself. Like what I'd mentioned, my good friend had told me, you can't fully love someone else until you love yourself. I had no idea how to love myself in this new normal. So if I could tell myself one thing, you need to take time for yourself. You need to not be consistently looking for a relationship, because truthfully, all you need is you, and you have the power within you to move forward from this. You might not know it yet, but you do. And you don't need anybody else to validate that you have the power to do so.
And that's so beautifully put. And I love that you just said that. And your friend that told you, right, how do you love yourself when there's, like, I heard it once from a wonderful therapist, you're an overdrawn bank account. There's nothing in you. And he said it so beautifully. He said, Holly, there's nothing left in you. You're an overdrawn bank account because people are so attracted to you. And this was in relationships, right? They're sucking the life out of you, and they're not putting anything in. There's no deposits. So it's like when I really gave myself permission to realize that one destructive relationship after another, I keep falling into them, is because I'm allowing people to continue to take, because they love that, take from the bank account. But I had to figure out how to love myself. And the number one most important thing now to this day is knowing to take care of myself and how to love myself and fill my bank account up. And I don't give that to anybody, right? Like that is, and when you finally give yourself permission and power to love yourself, those are two, wouldn't you say? Two really key things. Then you can share with the world, but there's nothing to share if there's nothing in there. It's gone.
Exactly. Yep. No, 100%. You are correct.
Yes, it's like, I was overdrawn. Well, I'm going to say it again. I started off the show with saying an inspiration, the courage, you're brave. There's so many things. I would also say that just getting this past half an hour with you, you live with such grace and humility, and you can tell you have healed, you have forgiven. There's no anger harboring in your heart. And I just want to commend you for that, because I think that is the greatest gift our world can learn from, is you've chosen to move on. And I know, Kristine, there's going to be people that want to reach out to you. So how best to serve and support you would you like people that want to reach out to you?
Sure. So you can check out Voices of Hope at www.voices-of-hope.org. That's our website, and you can check out, more information on the campaigns that we have throughout the year, and learn more about Voices of Hope as a whole. And then also you'll find contact information on the website, but I'll also give you my Voices of Hope email, which is Kristine, Kristine, at voices-of-hope.org. I can also be reached via email there as well.
Thank you. Thank you for your spirit. Thank you for being here. And thank you for being in my life. And let's do a big thank you to Michelle Reese again.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes. Have a wonderful rest of the day. And I can't wait to reconnect with you in the future. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Holly, for having me. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're a gift, my love. Thank you for joining me for another awesome celebration of you. If you were inspired by this story, please share it with your family and friends and hashtag Your Story Matters. I'd love to hear from you, so please leave a comment on iTunes. And absolutely, please come to my website, hollydowling.com. Leave a comment there too, and while you're there, pick up your free gift. Most importantly though, just remember that your life is a gift from God. What you do with it is your gift back.